Hello and welcome to Wolfman Gaming. This is my Metro Exodus Good Ending walkthrough, and this is mission 6, also known as the Dead City. And this is actually the final mission of the game, and this video is part 1 out of 2. And now we have gotten the extremely lengthy presentation out of the way. As I said, this is, I think it is Novosibirsk that we have reached, and we are here looking for a bag. Let's call it that. I don't want to get too far into detail. If someone is watching this video and haven't played the game, I want to try to not spoil anything. And as you can see, things are going quite quick here at the beginning. I did that because I have trimmed out quite a lot of the beginning of this level, because you are riding with Melnik into the inner parts of this city, and for the first part of it, Melnik will be driving, and then Artyom jumps over to the steering wheel and takes control basically. And I decided to speed this up because it's very linear and there are absolutely no enemies. But as I said, this is the last level of the game, and I split this up into 2 videos because it is quite a long level, and I have trimmed out a few cutscenes as well, because I think it was almost 2 hours of video, which I trimmed down to 2 30-minute videos. And hopefully you watched my previous video if you're following this guide and you have equipped the reinforced gas mask. If you haven't, you will get chances to do that in this level, because we will come across a few workbenches along the way. But in this level, through most of it, I would say, you are required to wear your gas mask. And the reinforced version does take a bit more of a beating before it breaks, and if your gas mask breaks here, to put it plainly, you're fucked. Down here in the tunnels, there's no danger of radiation. These are designed the same way as they are in Moscow, so the radiation doesn't come down here into the deep parts of them, at least. But we are gonna spend some time in the surface, as you do in the Dead City levels in all 3 of these games. Because in all 3 installments of this series, there is always one level called the Dead City, and I think it's nice that they put it in this one as well. And here we're gonna have our first little run-in with enemies. All the enemies you will fight in this level are mutants. There are no more human enemies to take out. And when we get into the thick of things, you will kind of realize why. Because unlike the Metro of Moscow, this place feels like it's pretty much abandoned by humans. I don't know what happened here, if the mutants took over or if this place was just hit harder by the nuclear war. Or it's just because game design. Because in the books relating to that these games are based off, there is a spin-off series written by a different author called Andrei Jakov. And I don't know what the original titles of the books are, but if you take the Swedish titles and translate them into English, they are called Journey to Light and Journey to the Dark, or to the Darkness. And they take place in St. Petersburg. Yes, St. Petersburg. It's been a while since I read them. But there it pretty much works like in Moscow, that people are living down in the metro in small states, just like here. And now you see once again that I've sped it up, because I think I sped up most parts in between combat in this level. Because this is a very linear level. Unlike the Volga or the Caspian levels, there is pretty much just one path you can follow. And I didn't want to make these videos too long. Instead, I decided to speed these parts up as I have done throughout this walkthrough. Something I haven't done before, but doing walkthroughs and being a content creator is always a learning process. And I hope that you don't feel that this in some or in any way makes the walkthrough worse. And if you think it is a good thing or a bad thing, please let me know in the comments, because all input that viewers can give me is something that I very much appreciate. Because these videos are here to help. That is the main reason for making walkthroughs, that you want to help other people get through certain difficulties, unlock certain trophies, or just get through the game on a difficulty that you may not have the skills or the patience to learn otherwise. So if there is something you think could be improved in my videos, or something you think is really good in my videos, please drop a comment, and even better, like like the video and tell your friends. But either way, what was I talking about? Yes, since we do have some downtime, I can take this time to talk about a few other things. Sony have released some info about the PlayStation 5. They have not said anything about when it will be released, but I'm guessing 2020 or next year. But something they said is that it will have an SSD drive. And apparently they had done some testing on, and it will also be backwards compatible with PlayStation 4 games at least. There is a rumor going around that it will have complete backwards compatibility. I think that is just a dream that never will be realized, because apparently PS3 games are apparently really hard to emulate. So I think that may cause some problems. Oh, by the way, here we're going into a second fight. So I'm gonna drop that subject for the moment and focus on this. How about that? Because there are mutants hiding in these piles of bodies. And something that I have realized playing through these games, and which you have seen in my walkthroughs if you have followed my videos, that whenever you have an NPC with you, if you stay passive and you try to stay out of the way, maybe in this area it would have been best to backtrack into the train we walked through to get to this area. But the NPC will draw the aggro of the enemies, because you see, right now I'm just sitting in a corner of the battlefield. I'm crouching down, I slam my back as far into this corner as I can, and these Nosalises or Watchmen or whatever they are completely uninterested in my presence. I think one or two of them will come attack me just because for some reason they realized, hey wait, there's a guy crouching in the corner. Yes, right on cue. But their main aggro will be towards Melnik. And I shouldn't call him Melnik, because Melnik is what he's called in the Swedish translation of the books, or Melnikov is actually his entire name. Miller is what he's called in English. So their main aggro is aimed towards him. So I'm just sitting here conserving my bullets and waiting for him to take everyone out, which I think is a viable strategy. That's a flaw in programming. But I think now the battle is over, more or less. There is, yeah, he kind of got stuck on stairs. I know that it happened. Yes. 2 of them got stuck on geography. Don't know why that happened. It didn't happen on my first playthrough. I played through this game once and then I started recording this walkthrough because I wanted to get it up and out as fast as possible. But I don't think that is something that usually happens. But there was only 2 mutants stuck there, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make a huge difference for the strategy if they are moving when you're playing. But getting back to the PlayStation 5 and the fact that it's supposed to have an SSD hard drive. I read had said they had done some testing since it will be backwards compatible with PlayStation 4 games, which I think is absolutely awesome. And that is something that may motivate me to buy it at release. But either way, the point I was getting to, come on Wolfman, stay on subject, is that apparently they had done some testing and they had compared a PS4 Pro towards, yes, a prototype of the PlayStation 5. And they had popped in a game, they didn't disclose which one it was, but it had a loading time of 15 seconds on the PlayStation 4 Pro, and on the PlayStation 5 it came down to 0.8 seconds. And if that is something that's consistent, that it will diminish loading times so very much over all games, that would be absolutely amazing, because that is something that I sometimes feel is a problem in games. There are games that have decent loading screens. Most games do nowadays. And but sometimes I've been playing Trials Rising quite a bit now. The Broken Mess, released by, I think they're called Ubilinks among people. It's Ubisoft and Red Links. And that game, first of all, it is a broken mess. There's a lot of bugs in it. There are some insane frame drops. But the main problem I see with that game are the loading screens, because the Trials games have always been quite high paced. You don't want to have a 30-second loading screen every time you start a level, since most levels only take around a minute to complete, and if you want to replay the level, you don't want to spend 30 seconds to 45 seconds waiting for that level to load in. So I hope that is something that will change with the new generation of gaming consoles. And since PlayStation 5, if they stay true, and it will be backwards compatible with all PlayStation 4 games. As I said, that is something that may make me want to buy it at release, because I bought the PS4 the day it was released. And it stayed in box for like 2 or 3 months after I had bought it, just because there weren't any games for it. And then you might ask yourself, why did you buy it then, Wolfman? Isn't that kind of stupid? Yes. It can be considered that, but what happened was I turned 30 like 2 months before it was released. So I didn't actually pay for my PlayStation 4 myself. I got it as a birthday gift from my friends and family and relatives, which was really nice of them. They gave me a lot of money that I invested in a PlayStation 4. I got a big figurine of Ellie and Joel from The Last of Us, and also bought a new electric guitar. And but there wasn't anything to play on it when I first bought it, so it felt really unnecessary. Also, here is another combat sequence. The kid that we found, he jumps in through a vent and we are left behind with these watchmen. And if you stay down here, 2, maybe 3 will come your way. And once again, most of them will aggro towards Miller. Now I even got the name right. So this is easy peasy. But can you imagine if the PlayStation 5... Let's allow ourselves to dream a little bit. Full backwards compatibility. Playing PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games. Some of those games have not aged well. That is something we can all agree on. If you have tried playing a PlayStation 1 game now, you'll realize that draw distance is something that is something they came up with in PlayStation 2. I was sitting with a friend of mine, drinking some beers and playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, which was a game I had for PlayStation 1. We played it on an emulator now, and oh dear God. I remember I loved that game when it came out. It was one of the games I bought from a PlayStation 1. I was in my teens, so I didn't have super much money, but that was one of the games I actually spent money on. I saved my money and I played a shit out of that game back in the days. But having played it now, I realized that that game did not age well. Also, quick note, you saw a transition there. After that fight is over, the kid shows up again and lets you and Miller in to his base of operations, should we call it. There is a workbench there, and so if you haven't put on the reinforced gas mask, feel free to do so there. You will come across at least one more workbench in this level if you want to keep the reinforced helmet, because they are both, what should we call it, head upgrades, so you can only use one of them. Either you can take more of a beating or your gas mask can. But since there are only mutants in this level, you don't have to worry too much about getting shot, so if they don't get up close and personal and kick your ass, there is no need for the reinforced helmet. There is only one place in this level where you'll face off against enemies that have distance attacks. But since you are forced to use the gas mask in both that area and in the areas succeeding that, is that the correct term? The areas after that, I still recommend going for the reinforced gas mask and being aggressive, but that is something I will show off in these videos. But I think that is in part 2. But you'll see it when we get there. Now, where was I? Yes. Draw distance and games not aging too well. That is quite sad when you replay some old games. That is something I really like about the 8-bit era, 16-bit era, games with pixel graphics. Because nothing ages better than pixels. No matter how big your TV is, no matter how high the resolution is, pixels will always be pixels. As I bought the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, and those games look as great now as they did back then. Some of them, the steering is not so good, but some of these games are almost older than I am, and I'm turning 36 this year. So, but they still look the same. You don't have to watch them through a nostalgia filter. Because pixels are always pixels. There are always little colored squares. But vector graphics and polygons for especially. Oh dear God, have you seen one great example? A game I thought was ugly as hell even back then was what's called Virtua Fighter. First time I saw it in an arcade. I think that was one of my first experiences with polygon graphics. And I thought that game was ugly. Legos have more shapes than those guys did. But either way, we'll see. I think there was a point to this. And the point is this, that hopefully in a perfect world it will have complete backwards compatibility. At least it will have PlayStation 4 compatibility and will hopefully get a lot shorter loading screens. And now we're going into another fighting sequence, and I don't like this fight. And something I realized after recording this is that maybe you can bypass the second and third phase of this. Because you will initially be attacked by, I think it's 3 mutants. This is the third one. And a thought struck me that maybe if you haul ass over to the other end of this area, because we're gonna open a door, we're gonna turn a valve handle and open a door and go on our merry way. But there is some downtime here in between waves. And I'm not quite sure what triggers the second wave, if it's time sensitive or if it's your movement that you move further up in this area. But I think that after the initial 3 mutants, maybe if you're really quick, you can run over to that handle, open a door and piss off before the rest of them show up to the party. That is something I'm definitely gonna try. And I've gotten the game back from a friend that borrowed it now, so gonna start doing a Ranger Hardcore playthrough soon. Hopefully. I'm still playing Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. And in my case it's called more or less Sekiro Wolfman Dies All the Fucking Time. But I am really enjoying that game. There's been a lot of videos and articles about the fact that people think it's too hard and that they should put an easy mode in it, which people always think whenever a new really hard game is released. I think we have seen that through the release of all the Dark Souls games and Bloodborne and probably Neo as well. As Neo is, as I understand it, very similar to the Dark Souls games. I haven't played it myself, but from the gameplay I've seen and a friend of mine that I talked to, it is quite similar. I'm actually thinking about buying it. But what I like about Sekiro, these games aren't for everyone. I am well aware of that. And sure, they would reach a higher or a bigger audience if they would nerf the difficulty in them. But I think the difficulty is part of the charm of these games, because you are forced to learn how the game works. And it's not like they are the only games that where you can choose the difficulty. But they are quite, I'm not gonna say unique, because there are other hard games that where you can change the difficulty, but a lot of games where there is a set difficulty aren't as hard as these games are. But when you learn the mechanics, the game becomes a lot less hard. But it is a steep climb to get there. I am aware of this. I have played through Dark Souls 1, I have played through Bloodborne, and I've guaranteed told you this before, but if you're new to the channel and you haven't heard me rant on about this, well, here's the time. Now, where was I? Yeah, and I like the fact that they never feel cheap. Or actually, scratch that. They do feel cheap. Both Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Sekiro have one thing that I really wish they would take out, because to me, it's cheap. In Bloodborne, it's called Frenzy. In Sekiro, it's called Terror. And can't remember what it's called in Dark Souls. I think it's like Curse or something like that. And that is a thing that happens, a status effect, that if that meter goes up to max, so you get struck by Frenzy in Bloodborne or Terror in Sekiro, it is an instant kill state. It will drain your entire life, one hit, no questions asked. And that is something I don't like, because there are very few enemies. I think there are only bosses that have it, but it's one of those cheap things. Instead, give the boss a few more attacks, or make the boss do more damage when he hits you. Don't put in those instant kill things. Never been a big fan of that, because yeah, feels a bit cheap. But either way, if you have brought the Shambler into this level, like I did, we are gonna take a little detour very soon, because we are gonna jump in a boat and head into the Putrid Tunnel. When you get like halfway through the tunnel, you get a trophy called Putrefaction, I think. But before we get to the middle part of it, I think that's the last thing we're gonna do in this video. I'm gonna show you how to get a new magazine for the Shambler. Because right now we have a cylinder magazine that fits 6 shells, and we're gonna put on a drum magazine that fits 20. And 20 shells is a lot. And in the areas coming up, there are some quite aggressive enemies, so 20 shells with an extended barrel is gonna serve you quite well. Because you don't want to end up in a situation where you have to reload, and the 6-shot cylinder magazine is so slow to reload. I think I talked about that in a previous video, that I almost prefer the A-shot with the double barrel expansion, because it's so much quicker on the reload. And I also think that it does pack a bigger punch than the Shambler does. But if you haven't brought the Shambler with you, if you have brought another weapon, you can skip this part, because I think this is the only thing we're gonna do in here. But it's by this little bridge. We're gonna head in, and we're gonna be quick about it. So we're gonna move in here to the right, because we need to circle around this area, and I suggest run. Run as fast as you can. And you see that giant worm snake thingy? We're gonna fight, I think it's at least 2 or 3 of those out in the tunnel, and that's why the reinforced gas mask is so great to have, because they have some distance attacks. But here, just be really quick, because you have watchmen behind you. So we move through this door. One of them is out there, but he didn't catch up because we were too quick for you, son. I think it's like a mutated rat. Some shit like that. But he does come in behind you. Or at least I get attacked in here, and I think it's him. Little bastard. He realized how to open doors. But here we have the box magazine, which fits 20 shells, and we're gonna we're gonna baptize it in Watchman blood. And that's all there is to this place. So as I said, if you don't have the Shambler, oh, there are also almost 3 minutes worth of filters. But if you didn't bring the Shambler, there is no sense in going in here. Just skip this part and head on through the tunnel. And now we are being chased by other watchmen, so we're gonna run through here. That worm won't attack you, so just haul ass, get out, jump into the boat. And that is the end of part 1. So I want to thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video. So until next time, this is the Wolfman signing off.